Okay, so let's take a look at creating our first web page with HTML. Couple things to keep in mind. Remember, HTML is a markup language. It's not a full programming language, but it is the primary language for building websites and creating our web pages. Now, there's a lot of additional tools beyond that. There are scripting languages, PHP, and other tools available. But for us, we're going to start with the beginning, and we're going to build our basic first HTML page. So if you'll notice here, I've got a couple of programs. I've got Notepad and Notepad++. I could have a whole bunch of others, but I point out Notepad++ because it's a great, simple text editor that gives you some nifty features that will help you in managing your files. It highlights code and color codes and saves with different file extensions and things like that. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to use Notepad though. It comes standard with Windows, so if you have a Windows operating system, you probably already have it. If you have a Linux or a Mac, they have text editors as well. But I'm going to use Notepad. The reason I don't use something like Microsoft Word, which is a word processor, is because I want simple, basic text. And word processors can add formatting and things like that that can affect our code. So you want a simple, basic text editor like Notepad, Notepad++, or any variety of other basic text editors. So I'm going to go ahead and open Notepad, and I'm ready to start writing my code. So I'm going to add my basic code here. I'm just going to paste it in. And this is what we call a skeleton of a basic simple web page. I've got my doc type declaration. This is a line of code that tells the browser this is HTML5 code. I've got my opening HTML tag, my closing HTML tag, I've got my head, my body, and so forth. Notice within the body tags, I've got a couple of other tags. I've got a heading level 1, I've got a paragraph tag, just to show for example. And it's within the body tag, and you'll learn more about this as you continue through the course, but this is typically what appears on our web page, in the main part of our web page. And so here I should have a heading level 1 that'll show up and it'll say this is the heading, and I should have a paragraph as well. So from here, I'm ready to save my first web page. And I've got a couple of things to consider when doing that. The first is just saving the text file so I can re-edit this code later. So I'm going to save this as a basic text file first, and I'm going to call it all lowercase, and that's very important, index, no uppercasing. And I'm going to add to that, well, in this case I'm not going to add anything because I'm going to save this as a basic text document with the .txt extension. And notice at the drop down, and this I don't have any other options. In Notepad++ and other text editors, you might have an HTML option. So I'm going to save this. It's going to be a basic text file. It's going to save it on my desktop. I'm going to drag it over from my other monitor, and there's my basic text file. If I open it up, there's my basic text file, and here I'm back to the original. So now I want to save this as a web page. So in order to do that, I'm going to go back up to File, Save As, leave the name as index, but I'm going to add a .html extension. And this extension is what associates this file with the browser. Just like if you were to use Microsoft Word to create a resume, that resume file that you created is associated with the .doc extension with Microsoft Word. Right? It's the same thing with HTML. It associates this file with your default browser. So in this case, my default browser is Chrome. So if you have Firefox or something, you'll see it associated with that default browser. So in order to do that in something like Notepad++ or most modern operating systems, I could probably click Save and it'll save it with this extension. But I want to be sure. And it's a nifty little trick that comes in handy for a variety of purposes. I'm going to put this all in quotations. And what that does is it forces this file to override the txt extension with the .html extension. Again, I could probably get away with it without the quotes, but I want to make sure. And I can do that with any file extension if I want to change the file extension that is assigned to a given file. In this case, I want to force this. Now later on in the program, other courses you're going to take, you may have different file extensions for your web pages, a .php extension or something like that. But for most of the things that you're going to do in this course, even when you're doing JavaScript, it's going to be an HTML file extension. So I'm going to stick this on my desktop. I'm not going to put it in a folder just for time's sake, but you want to organize all of your pages into a folder as you create them, and you want to save this text so you can go this text file so you can go back and edit it and things like that. Now, the next big question here is, why did I save this with the name index? And am I going to save all of my pages with the name index? And the answer is no, I'm not going to. I'm only going to save one and only one page for my website with the name index. The reason is that our web server, when we go to put this on a web server, it's designed so that it will look in a folder that contains the files for your website, and it's going to look for one file that's named index, or it could be named home, in this case index, and it's going to load that page first. It's the index that is basically the home page of your website. From there, to get to other pages, which are simply other files in your folder, in your web root folder, you're going to use links that you're going to place on your index page that'll take you from that page to other pages and so on and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and now I should have my index page. It's on my other monitor, so I'm going to drag it over here. So there's my index page, and notice that it has the association with Chrome because that's my default browser. All I need to do at this point is double click on it, and it should open up in Chrome, and there's my web page. Very simple, no colors or background, just I've got my heading level 1 and my paragraph. Pay attention though to the path here. Notice that the name is index, and it's located on my desktop, on the C drive, and so forth. Now, that when we put it on a web server, in a web root folder on a web server, is going to have an associated URL with it. And we'll get into that in later chapters and later courses. So from here, when you create your additional pages for your website or websites, you're going to name them something else. Maybe you have a website and you have a page that has contact information. You might name that contact.html. Later on, maybe .php if you've got that scripting language code in there or what have you. Notice that I typed it in all lowercase as well. I didn't put any spaces there. I didn't put any underscores or weird characters like a $sign or anything. In IT, this is a good rule of thumb to follow. Lowercase, no weird characters, straightforward and simple. If you capitalize the I because you want to be orderly and make it look nice or grammatically correct or whatever, you can run into issues. So all lowercase, index.html. So hopefully this will get you up and running with your first web page. From here, when I say take a screenshot at runtime, this is what I mean by runtime, meaning that you've entered your code and you've saved it as an HTML file and you've run it and it's displaying in your browser. So in some cases I may say upload a screenshot of your code or upload a screenshot of your page at runtime, and this is what I mean by at runtime. So hopefully this will get you up and going, get you started with your first assignments, and this is the way you're going to do many of the example pages in the beginning, and then we'll look at more advanced applications later on.